The Chicago Bears' last drive in their loss to the Atlanta Falcons was maddening. But don't let anybody use that as an example or evidence that Justin Fields doesn't have what it takes to finish games out for your Chicago Bears.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lorin Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Bears. You can like Locked On Bears on Facebook. Join the Locked On Bears Facebook group for even more Bears talk. And make sure you hit that subscribe button on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel to keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today, and hopefully every single day. Today's episode of Locked On Bears is presented by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projections, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with our promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. On the show today, we recap another Chicago Bears loss, starting with that last drive of the game and what seems like dozens of insane, wild, dumb things that all happened on that drive that just sort of was out of this world, like unbelievable, speechless level of like back-to-back-to-back things that happened on those 3 plays and what it kind of says, bigger picture, and more importantly, what it doesn't say about Justin Fields, despite what I'm sure many people will try to use it to say about Justin Fields. We'll then kind of look at kind of the rest of the game, what the Falcons defense was doing against Fields and this Bears offense, where they were able to have some success, where they weren't, and then we'll wrap up looking at this Bears defense, trying to get pressure on Marcus Mariota, not really having much luck in that department, but overall, I think I don't know if it's improvement from the defense, but it wasn't as bad of a defensive performance as we have seen in some of the recent weeks. And when you go from rock bottom to slightly above rock bottom, let's call that progress. But let's start with the final drive of this game, because my goodness, it's just so many different things stacked on top of each other for how horrendously that went. So, of course, Bears down 3. Justin Fields gets the ball back with like a minute 47-ish, 3 timeouts, his time to shine, his time to drive down the field and lead the team to a victory, or at least a tie with a potential field goal. And they come out, first play, quarterback run left, sweep left, where they pull the offensive lineman and sweep him out to the outside, and goes all the way out of bounds and hit for like a gain of a yard, comes down on the left shoulder injured, and stays in the game. But really scratching my head a little bit on coming out with the quarterback sweep run as the first play of that game, that drive, even separate from the injury, right? Any of the quarterback running plays, or even if it was a passing play and he scrambled, right? There is an injury risk every time Justin Fields is tackled. And I don't necessarily blame that play call specifically as like, gets he injured Fields by calling that play, because they'd ran that play 4 or 5 times earlier in the game, and he could have just as easily got hurt anytime they ran the play. It's just part of the risk there. But to go quarterback run on the first play of a 2-minute drive at the late in the game, like, not that you have the 3 timeouts and you have some time. It's not like you have to go instant no huddle and take shots all, deep shots all drive, but like that's the play call you start out with in a vacuum. Okay, you try one running play, okay, whatever. You get back to it. It gets out of bounds, stops the clock, I guess. You get back to it. All right, go time, right? Okay, first play, disastrous, but still a lot of drive left, and Fields is staying in the game. We'll see how from this point, we'll see how the shoulder's going to do. Second play of the drive, quarterback draw. Now, which is compounded then by him having gotten hurt on the previous play. If Justin Fields isn't hurt on the previous play and it's still 2nd and 9, quarterback draw would still be a really questionable decision there. Like, you got to start throwing the ball. First of all, you had to burn a timeout because of the injury to keep Fields in the game. So you can't say that Getsy had no idea whether Fields was hurt there and was just rolling with it. But so why do you put your somehow injured, still didn't know exactly what at the time, quarterback in harm's way with a quarterback draw play, like a designed quarterback run, and then you add on top of that, he slides wisely and is hit after sliding above the waist and up in the shoulder and head area. I haven't seen exactly where the contact was made, but still hit after the play was done, and not a single flag from the referees. I mean, we've seen some very horrendous calls in some Chicago Bears games, and I will never be the guy who says, oh, the Bears lost because of the refs. The Bears had plenty of other things in that game that could have won them the game. They lost by 3. If Cairo Santos hits that 56-yard field goal, it's, what I mean? Like, there's 15 plays in that game that the Bears could have won on. And the referees not calling the flag there does not mean the Bears lose the game. But Jesus, man, like, how obvious of an after the whistle hit does it have to be to, by the way, your injured quarterback? Why was he even running a quarterback draw on that play? I have absolutely no idea. So then you get to third down, and finally they decide to pass the ball, which was a genius idea. I mean, about time. And of course, Fields gets under some quick pressure. It's kind of a messy offensive line, attempts the jump pass, a little high for David Montgomery, but David Montgomery gets both hands on the ball. And had he not gotten both hands on the ball, I don't think it would have been intercepted. It's because you see the ball hit Montgomery's hands, and then the trajectory changes and it falls into the arms of the linebacker. If Montgomery doesn't jump at it at all and it just goes over Montgomery's head, either A, Darnell Mooney behind him might have caught it, but B, it probably falls incomplete. This was not a pass, it was an inaccurate pass by Justin Fields. It was too high, but it was not an interceptable ball when it left Fields' hands, right? I mean, maybe it was an incomplete pass when it left his hands, but it wasn't interceptable until David Montgomery got 2 hands on it. And you need to catch that ball or don't touch the ball, but you can't do that. And it just feels like offensive line failed him on that play. Yes, he was a little bit accurate, but he was hurt. And the running back failed him on that play after his offensive coordinator had failed him on 2 plays and the referees had failed him on the previous play. Just absolutely everything around that quarterback not going well. And then, of course, not to divert any of the blame, probably should have been an incomplete pass on third down anyway, and it would have been fourth down and another pivotal moment for Fields to have to step up in. But it was not like Fields threw the world's worst interception in the world. It had to be tipped in order to be intercepted, and otherwise should have been caught while being hurt and with an offensive line that struggled a lot in the game and also on that last play. So, I mean, it's just a treasure trove of garbage. And, it's just everything that could have gone wrong seemingly was going wrong. And the injury, the most important part, the injury, the most important part, and the one that may have the biggest impact here that we'll need to watch out for moving forward here. But I want to go bigger picture with this offense outside of just that last drive of the game and look at some of the things the Falcons defense was doing to limit the Bears offense a little more than we've seen in some recent weeks, and how the Bears offense responded through this game next on Locked On Bears. This holiday season, find what you love at Total Wine and More. With so many great bottles to choose from, it's easy to find a new favorite Cabernet or Chardonnay, or the perfect gifts for everyone on your list with some help from a friendly guide. And all of that with the confidence of knowing you found something special for the lowest price. I love Total Wine & More. I go there all the time to pick up whether it's wine or beer or spirits. I mean, they got the best selection I can find anywhere in my town, and I bet it's pretty similar at your nearest Total Wine. Love what you find only at Total Wine & More. Curbside pickup and delivery available in most areas. Visit TotalWine.com to learn more. Drink responsibly. Be 21. Locked On Bears podcast is brought to you by our friends at Turo. Turo is the world's largest car-sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want, wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts. You can browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget. Whether you want to get a classic or luxury car for some kind of special event, maybe a birthday, a holiday, you want an affordable economy car if you're on a budget, you just need to get from point A to point B. Or you can even test drive that new car that you've had your eye on, just to sort of see how it might fit in your everyday life. And many Turo hosts can even deliver the car right to you. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms and conditions and exclusions apply. Forget boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com. The Chicago Bears offense struggled at times to find its drive after an otherwise strong start, opening drive touchdown for this team. And then there were a few struggles here and there. We've kind of seen that happen at times with this Bears offense, but it seemed like in this one in particular, it wasn't quite clicking as much. Still scored 24 points, but we were used to the 30-plus range over the last few games. And I think the Falcons did some good things on their own to hold the Bears down a little bit. And I think the Bears got in their own way a little bit in some of those moments as well, as evidenced by the last drive of the game that we just got done talking about. But definitely you saw the Falcons sit back in a lot of zone coverage and really kind of keep things in front of them and say, if you want to check down and dink and dunk your way down the field, be our guest. If you're going to have to do it 3 or 4 yards at a time through the passing game, and that's not the way the Bears offense is built, and it's not the type of quarterback Justin Fields is in terms of the quick game. And so I think, there were some challenges there. They also did a pretty darn good job of corralling the Bears running game. I mean, obviously Justin Fields had a couple of nice runs in there, but David Montgomery averaged less than 4 yards a carry, and Treston Ebner was practically useless as a runner out of the backfield there. So you have to give some credit to the Falcons defense here, really being disciplined in limiting some of the damage that Justin Fields was able to do with his legs, some of the damage compared to the historic rates he was rushing at from the previous week. And also, limiting some of the Bears' downfield passing game. Like the two or three big downfield passes we saw were a couple of times when a defender covering Darnell Mooney tripped and fell down. And it wasn't like, the Bears had some great play to get behind their coverage. It was just like an individual mistake by an individual player, or, scramble drill type things where Justin Fields gets 6, 8, 10 seconds into a play holding onto the pass, and man or zone coverage just can't hold up for 10 seconds on a passing play. It's not realistic to expect any defense to hold up that long in coverage. And that's kind of the other aspect or the other side of this coin when it comes to what we saw from the Bears offense in this game, that the offensive line was really bad, but also Justin Fields had some really nice plays of extending plays in the pocket. He definitely took some sacks there that you don't want to see him have those hits. There were a couple that, the middle of the pocket collapsed and he just couldn't really get out of it in a way that I think was more disruptive than we were used to. That in previous weeks, Justin Fields would get pressure in the pocket fairly quickly, but had, a much more remarkable sense for evading it and escaping it. We saw some of that in this game, but there were 2 or 3 of those sacks where the pocket just gets messy in his face right in front of him, and he can't get out and away from it. It kind of just gets vacuum sucked in, absorbed by that pass rush a little bit. And that was one of the things we talked about on Friday's game plan podcast. And we talked about a little bit on Thursday's crossover podcast as well, that Grady Jarrett and the interior of that Falcons offensive line, I wondered if you're getting that pressure more up front in Justin Fields' face, it's a little bit harder for him, I think, to feel that and get out of the pocket in that way. Whereas when it's an edge rusher, he can either spin around them or run away from them horizontally. But some of those interior guys getting right up in his face isn't as natural of a move away, I think, for Fields. And that's why you saw some of the issues that he had in terms of taking a few sacks there. But it was sort of this combination, right, of offensive line struggles, but then when the offensive line could hold up for a little while, or Fields was able to make guys miss on 3 or 4 times where guys should have sacked him and just didn't because he's that talented of an athlete at the quarterback position, the coverage can't hold up that long. It just is not able to, and that's where you saw the Bears have some of their better success in the passing game. I mean, I think back to maybe his best throw of the game was the wheel route to David Montgomery down the right sideline, where Fields has a little time in the pocket and then he rolls out towards his right, and Montgomery is just working on a little check down, and Fields signals him with his hand, to hey, turn and go vertical, and then he threw just an absolutely gorgeous ball over the top, lands it in the David Montgomery breadbasket down the sideline. That is such a difficult throw to make, and it was perfect, in stride, exactly where you needed to drop that pass, compared to the Darnell Mooney wide open 65-yarder or whatever it was, that just a few steps beyond Darnell Mooney's reach, the overthrow early in that game. Mooney said afterward that he felt like he was a little bit slow, that he said he was kind of tired from the last couple of plays and didn't think he was quite full speed to get under that. And had he been at 100% energy and 0% fatigue, it's a touchdown there. I think Fields actually threw it where he was supposed to, and it was Mooney who uncharacteristically couldn't get there, but Fields was expecting a full speed Mooney, and Mooney didn't have the gas left to get under that ball and go get it, despite how wide open he was. But you still had the other Darnell Mooney touchdown. And let's not forget about the Cole Kmet one-handed catch. Really, you know what I mean? Everything that happened at the end of that game overshadows a lot of the other things in the game. But holy, my goodness. I said it on Twitter, I did not think Cole Kmet was capable of that type of play. I really did. I mean, he hasn't shown us to be a dynamic athlete or a particularly, dominant wide receiver. Like, he didn't make catches quite like that even at Notre Dame, right? So, like, this evolution and this growth from him has been great. And I'm not going to let anybody gaslight me and say, oh, yeah, we knew Cole Kmet could do that all along. No, you didn't. You're a fan and you're optimistic for him and you're hopeful for him. 100%, please do. I want you to. But, like, you can't sit there and say, oh, yeah, we all knew that Cole Kmet could make a one-handed catch like that through contact up the seam, because he's never done it before. So, like, let's be very clear about Kmet. Be excited about Kmet and also not try and gaslight people about not thinking Cole Kmet was fully capable of making that type of, George Kittle, Travis Kelce level play is just not something we saw him do, throughout his career. But the other thing that stood out for me with Fields briefly was, he hit guys in the helmet twice, two passes off helmets, one offense, one defense. I think he leads the league in helmet throws, and that's something I want to explore more in the future, but I don't have a very good answer for him. A lot of times he's changing his arm angle, but does he need to, is that a problem? Is that a real problem that he'll need to fix in the offseason, or is it just sort of like been a little bit more coincidental and we're noticing it more lately? Something to file away there to keep an eye on here moving forward. But also want to keep an eye on this Bears defense that playing a Falcons offense that maybe isn't great by any means, but still I think represented some small level of progress for this Bears defense, especially when you take a step back and realize special teams didn't do them any favors at times as well. We'll kind of take a look at the rest of the other sides of the ball here for this Bears team and this loss next on Locked On Bears. The Locked On Bears podcast is brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks, the better way to do daily fantasy sports, because PrizePicks puts you in control, complete control, unlike some of the other daily fantasy platforms where, you're picking your lineup and it's against other people's lineups. So whether you win or not is totally dependent on what other people are going to do in relation to you. But PrizePicks has no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they'll score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, and you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. It's super easy and fast, literally 60 seconds or less, and boom, you're ready to roll on how much Justin Fields is going to perform, how much Darnell Mooney is going to perform, David Montgomery, etc. Every Bears game, plus across every sports league as well. So download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with our promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Just don't forget to enter that promo code LOCKEDON at sign-up for an instant deposit match up to $100. I'm trying to be careful with the language I use about this Bears defense because, you lost, first of all. And second of all, 27 points on the scoreboard is never going to be a winning defensive performance. Or it's not what I would consider a winning defensive performance. You can win, but you know what I mean. But also, 7 of those points was on a Cordero Patterson kickoff return touchdown. So really, defense gave up 20, which, okay, that's not a bad day at the office. It's not, you can always do better. I mean, you want to give up fewer than 20, but for what we had seen from this Bears defense over the last few weeks where they've just been gashed all game, this felt better than that. Even if it's not anywhere close to where we want this Bears defense to be, I think we can acknowledge some progress in some areas while continuing to see very big problems in other areas. Like when you talk about a 20-point give up on the defense, because 7 on the special teams, that's only 2 touchdown drives. And one of those touchdown drives was the one where, Kyler Gordon blitzed Marcus Mariota and, tickled his feet, and Mariota fell over with Gordon pulling on his shoelaces, and they called roughing the passer penalty, and then it gave them 1st and goal and read option and went right in. That's not to say that it was a good drive from the defense or that it excuses giving up the touchdown there. But one of the issues here is penalties. And there's a difference between the Falcons gashing them all over that drive and a penalty setting them up. Because you might remember that play was a 3rd down and an incomplete pass. And so it would have been, I think they were in field goal range. So it would have been 3 instead of 7. But the penalty is what allowed them to then get 7. And I think there's those 2 separate issues, right? The Bears definitely are still having way too many penalties. And I think it's reflecting poorly right now on Matt Eberflus. They put such an emphasis on the hits principles and all this stuff that the discipline is such a big part of what they're preaching. And we're still seeing 7 penalties for 56 yards in this game. after we have had like 7 and 9 penalty games over the last few weeks as well. So like penalties are a very real problem that has not been improving. Totally fair. But otherwise defensively, first drive of the game, yeah, way too easy for the Falcons. They drive down a score. Agreed. Totally. But then from there, it's like field goal, and, kickoff return touchdown, and then roughing the passer penalty on a third down, like penalty drive that gives up a touchdown. And it's like, okay, well, outside of that first touchdown drive by the Falcons was the only one where the Falcons on their own, under their own volition offensively, drove down the field for a touchdown. Every other drive was going to end in a field goal or a punt. It was still, going to be 3 or 4 field goals, which is not good, and you want to cut down on those as well. Like, yes, we're not saying the defense was great or that they've solved everything. But, one bad touchdown drive compared to like the 4 bad touchdown drives we've seen in recent games represents some amount of progress to me. Like, they only allowed 131 passing yards to Marcus Mariota. It wasn't like he was throwing the ball up and down the field the way that we saw Tua Tagovailoa, Dak Prescott, and even Jared Goff to some extent last week, right? You know what I mean? Like, the Falcons are not good, but it's some amount of progress that they weren't getting, absolutely demolished up there. They still gave up 150 rushing yards to like 7 different running backs. It felt like it didn't seem like it didn't matter who the Falcons put back there. They were getting some real space there. I mean, I was not super familiar with Algier and Huntley, but they got a few different guys going in there. Of course, Cordero Patterson had a couple of nice runs, but Cordero Patterson had a fumble. The defense forced a fumble, and the special teams on punt coverage also forced a fumble. The Bears only got 1 touchdown out of those 2 turnovers that they generated, but like, hey, that's also progress from this Bears defense there. So like, they're doing some things. You still see, guys getting beaten coverage, play action giving them some trouble, some real struggles from Kyler Gordon, some missed tackles from Jaquan Brisker and others in this game. Like, and of course, maybe biggest picture here, pass rush is still non-existent. 0 sacks of Marcus Mariota, a couple of hits at best. I think Sanborn got 1 and Gordon got 1 on the roughing the passer penalty that won't count in the stat sheet there. The Bears were blitzing the heck out of the Falcons, especially early on. And I think I don't have the numbers on it, but throughout the game, it still felt like a higher frequency of blitzes than we have generally seen from Alan Williams. They blitzed a lot last week against the Lions because they recognize this pass rush ain't doing it. They're not getting home with 4-man rush. These 4 guys are not doing it. And adding Taco Charlton didn't seem to change that just yet, but too early to sort of have the results on that or to have a final evaluation on that. But like, you have some things there the defense was doing well, and then special teams kickoff return touchdown problem. Santos missing the field goal at 56 yards was a difficult ask. Don't get me wrong, but you still like he thought he could hit it and could not, and therefore it's sort of his fault at that point, even though it's still a hard thing to ask for there. And so like, I don't know, it felt like some amount of progress. That doesn't mean it's like problem solved. And we'll see. I think next week will be another interesting measuring stick placing the New York Jets, another offense that is really, really struggling. They had 2 yards in the second half of their game on Sunday. 2 yards in the net in the entire second half. I'm 6'5". I am more than 2 yards tall. Like that, you know what I mean? Like they moved the ball the length of my body, less than the length of my body in the second half of their last game. So in theory, if the Bears are showing real improvement against the Falcons, and now they're playing an offense that is sputtering, it should be a better game for this Bears defense next week as well to continue this progress. And if it's not, that's a very, very real problem that we've seen continue to be a real problem through the last couple of games of Chicago Bears football. Seems like Travis Gibson avoided major injury getting back in the game there, but we saw a couple of different guys shaken up throughout that game, and kind of see what strength this defense is going to be at moving forward here. You can be sure we'll break down all the injury updates, especially around Justin Fields, all week long here on the Locked On Bears podcast. So make sure you hit that subscribe button so you're keeping up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making the Locked On Bears podcast your first listen today. Here on the Locked On Podcast Network, we are your team every day, and that includes all your major Chicago sports team. Locked On Bulls every single day. Locked On Cubs, Locked On White Sox, getting you through the off-season now. Locked On Blackhawks is rolling, plus some of our college shows, Locked On Fighting Illini and Locked On Northwestern Wildcats as well. So go check out some of our other Chicago area sports Locked On podcasts. Come on back tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Bears. And of course, you got to keep coming back for your next opportunity to bear down.